It turns out this gentleman wants to ask anything before we go.
Well, I suppose it's nothing. It's not like a battle this time. It's because I thought of this for like quite a while.
Yeah.
But I've never actually had a proper conversation with anyone relating to it. You know how we have the way things are in the world now and how bad things are. One of the things that the atheists love to say is why does God allow evil?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know if anyone's had, maybe you know of someone who's like done a writing where they actually try to come up with some reasoning for it, rather than like a generic, he just allows it, but more saying that he's doing it for a reason and there's a strategy to it.
Okay, well, look, I'll give a Calvinist view and then our view. Calvinists would say, well, it's for the glorification of God.
Right.
So even though God ordains every evil act, so from a bank robbery to a rape of a child, God ordains all that for a Calvinist,
right.
But it's for the greater glory of God, and that's a mystery known only properly to God. We Catholics say evil is the consequence of original sin, the original sin of our first parents, and that man has free will, so he doesn't have to do any evil at all, but he chooses to do it. Now, what the original sin does is give us an inclination towards evil, but we can, by the grace of God and our free will operating together, avoid doing evil and just do good, or at least be neutral, I suppose we could say. So that would minimise the amount of evil in the world, but given that evil does happen, God can use it to his benefit. That is, he can bring good out of evil. If man will insist on doing evil, God will bring good out of it, because he'll never be frustrated by evil, the evil that men do. But it's a free choice of every man to do evil.
Right. So have what you just said there? Is that something that a Catholic wrote on, or is it just?
That's general Catholic belief.
Right. Okay.
Firstly, we have free will.
Yeah.
There is predestination, by the way. Predestination, but there's free will.
Yeah, that's the Calvinists.
Yeah, the Calvinists say though there isn't free will. There's no free will in Calvinism. Yeah. There can't be, because God ordains from before you're born whether you're going to go to hell or not.
Yeah, the only reason I'm saying that is because when I've listened to John, what's his name?
James White?
Yeah, James White, that's it. When I listened to him for a while, people try and catch him out with that question, but he seems to have a way around it.
Well, he doesn't, because I've seen even a young Mormon that he was having a discussion with caught him out. Even a Mormon.
Yeah.
He said, so rape of a child is planned by God. And he ums and ahs, and he eventually says, yeah, but it's for the greater glory of God. We don't know the mystery behind it, right?
Yeah.
That's how they have to be, because they are basically determinists. However, the Catholic system is there's predestination, but however mysterious that is, you don't ever take away man's free will. So no evil act that befalls another human being is a decision made by God.
Yeah.
Except you could say the evil act that befell Jesus to take our sins upon him. But Judas Iscariot never had to do what he did. Yes, he was the one, but he could have chosen not to. Somebody else could have done it.
Yeah.
It would have happened one way or the other by someone's hands, but that's their free choice. There's never a determination. God never made Judas as to be this robot who would betray Christ. He freely chose. That's why he's almost certainly in hell, in our tradition. So we freely commit evil. That's the position. And we freely could have avoided it. And it's all because of original sin. But God... So one of the things we can say, when a terrible thing happens to a person and they're killed, they're murdered, they go into the arms of God. So if it's a child who's murdered, they'll be going to God's hands. It's true, one could say, well, why didn't he prevent that killing? That's a fair point. But you see, God has established the world in a way where we are free to do terrible things, but that affects only our bodies. God never allows our souls to be harmed by anybody except us. So, for example, if it gets so bad that the devil possesses somebody, he can't possess their soul, only their body, and I suppose their mental faculties to a degree, but their souls can never be corrupted by him. We can corrupt our souls, only us. So God has put like a shield around the soul. So evil will happen, but Jesus himself, he didn't cure all the sick in the world when he was here. He didn't get the Romans out of Israel. He didn't stop the. He said, you're going to have to suffer like I did to be with me. That's a bit strange, isn't it? We seem to. The willingness to suffer seems to be embedded in the existence that God has created. It's like there's something that's right about it. Willingness to put up with evil.
Yeah. So what you said there about some things happen and some evil's going to happen where it can bring out a greater glory for God. So has anyone, if you've ever heard, discussed about why doesn't God, since he controls like who gets life, so he knows who's going to live. So has you've heard anyone talk about why doesn't God actually control that process like before people are born in order to just make the world like a perfect place? Because he could.
Okay.
But there's obviously a reason he doesn't.
Yeah, because the idea was that out of two human beings would come the entire human race, and they would be perfect, and a perfect planet and a perfect universe. And eventually, we would go on to the next life, not in a painful way, but in a way, what we say like the Virgin Mary did when she was assumed bodily into heaven at the end of her life. That's how we would envision it would have been for all human beings. However, because of the first parent sinning, then the original sin passes through generation, by way of generation, from one person to another, down the centuries. And God is not going to intervene with a miracle in each moment prior to conception to make the person perfect or whatever. Or just let the good ones be born.
Okay, but so what would you say, or what is the reasoning why he wouldn't do that intervention? Because there's nothing like wrong with him doing that if you think about it.
Because it would be saying he's going to nullify the effect of original sin. But his approach was to say to our first parents, that there's going to be conflict between them and the serpent, for example. And they're going to have a hard life outside of the garden.
Yeah.
So it is the fate of man now to suffer. But what Jesus did was to repair the broken relationship between us and God, but not to repair the physical universe, nor to repair the physical nature of man. Reparation will come, but that's after the millennium. That's in the new heavens and the new earth. For those who are alive, at that moment.
So I suppose.
And of course, we'll have our renewed bodies when the general resurrection happens at the end of time.
So I suppose the next one is that I remember an atheist asked me this one, is that why did God put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, since he knew that they were going to sin with it? So there's two things he could have done. Either the tree of knowledge of good and evil just wasn't there, or he could have made it a bit more, defended it a bit more, but rather than leaving it completely free, so that if they were, so when they were going to actually, even like when Eve was looking at it, there's no kind of deterrent there. So the deterrent isn't there to put her off from going to it. So the only deterrent that existed was just what God said.
Okay. Yeah. I was actually rereading a Catholic mystic who I follow called Maria Valtorta.
Yeah, I've seen them.
And she was saying Jesus is commenting on Genesis and this issue. In fact, one of my latest videos actually about that. And he says, he calls it a symbolical tree. Now, it may be a real tree, but it symbolises something. A tree itself doesn't matter, right? A tree, whatever fruit it's got, doesn't matter. It's just fruit. It's just a tree. But the importance of this is the importance in this scenario, Garden of Eden with the tree in there, is that we, as human beings, always have this option. We can reach out and choose knowledge contrary to what God wants us to have. So by having the tree there accessible, it completes the symbol, the metaphor, if I can put it that way. Because if it were outside, if it were not accessible, say it was a fence around it, or angels guarding it, or it wasn't even in the garden, then it wouldn't be fulfilling its role to symbolise that we have this option to obey God or to disobey God. And to obey him just simply say, right, hands off this, going this far. But to disobey him is to say, well, there's this option of me getting knowledge that he doesn't want me to have. And that's why the tree must be right there for the human being to go to and to be seduced by Satan to disobey God to access what it has. And what that knowledge he has, in the particular thing I was reading from of Jesus to Maria Valtorta, was this, that it was the particular knowledge was the knowledge of procreation. So there's the first sin is disobedience. But that knowledge would have been, if you disobey God, you'll be seeking this knowledge about what was to be for God alone, that we would reproduce as human beings, not with lust as we do now, but there would be a kind of more holy way of reproducing, but the human race would reproduce. And so, but this point about the tree though, just on the tree, yeah, it's there and accessible because that's the fulfillment of the symbol that choosing against God is a choice we can freely make immediately if we want.
Right, because I suppose because thinking about that, the other thing that I thought is that you could have left it accessible, but you said about having a fence around it or put it somewhere inaccessible, but then the other option would have been just to make it look a bit slimy or put spikes on it, but it's still accessible. But when you look at what Eve said,
it was beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's the thing.
So further, the symbol is this. It is things that are sinful are often really, really attractive. Why vast numbers of us males are on the pornography sites? Why in the old days was Soho a booming business for strip clubs? It's not like people say, "Oh, I really don't like that sort of thing, but I'll go anyway because I must go once a week." No, it was like they're compelled to go, right? It's the inclination sin, concupiscence, we say. But forgetting individual sins, the desire to disobey God for something which we know we should not be seeking is a desire to disobey him because that thing is intrinsically attractive. It is attractive to go outside of God's rules. If anybody sets you rules, there's a desire to go outside them. Now, if you make it unattractive, the symbol begins to break down because intrinsically disobedience is attractive. From childhood, right?
I think I see what you're saying. What you're saying is that he made the tree that way because he wanted it to match the how do you say it?
The reality that we experience in desiring disobedience.
So he made it match it because of that reason, not because for a specific thing or because he was being mean or anything like that.
But also remember, it's like the tree was symbolising a power, at least some kind of power, knowledge, whatever. That God said, there's this thing that you could have physically. You are able to have it, but I don't want you to have it. And so that was meant that man was understanding that by obeying God, he's restricting himself. And none of us wants to restrict ourselves. We intrinsically want to have everything if we can. And so that's why it's made to look lovely, the tree. Because wanting the thing over there that we're told we shouldn't have, and we can give it 1,000 good reasons for not having it, but it's still very, very attractive because it's something that we could have that we don't have. Until we've got everything, we won't be fully content. And God sees that in man, but the difference between Adam and Eve and us is that we're now really fallen. Adam and Eve could see the sense of this. They saw, so God we know, God is trustworthy, he's made us, he's everything to us, that's fine. So he says something, that's fine, we'll obey. And Adam was not disobeying. It's his wife that went and disobeyed, and then she basically, through a silver tongue, she convinces him. And she's been convinced by the serpent.
But I suppose here's the other issue, because I think the atheist likes to say this as well. So why didn't... Because God could have just not made the serpent. And and the other one the atheists love to say is, so why didn't God just kill Satan?
Well, the fact is, if in the garden there was no serpent, or the serpent was killed before he could do his damage, then we'd be again not the garden would not be symbolising what it needs to symbolise. I'm saying although it symbolises things, it may still be a real garden. I'm not doubting that it really happened, but it's to show that man is always going to face this choice to obey God or to disobey God, and there will be it's easier to obey God when there's no temptation going on, when you're not being invited by some outside force to disobey God. But in fact, there is a demon out there, the devil, and he wants to persuade us to disobey God. So it makes it even more difficult to obey God. So you, by actually not having the serpent in the garden, reduces the reality of the symbol. Because the reality is Satan will be there to tempt us. So then the question might be, why not have killed Satan when he fell, instead of casting him into the earth and then letting him roam around, causing us trouble? Well, God could have done that to destroy the angelic being, but it seems that God's way, once he's created a being, he doesn't destroy it. No being, no sentient being. Of course, the animals have animal souls, as we Catholics say. So when they die, that's the end of the animal. Say with plants, with their vegetative souls, when they die, that's the end of them. But human beings and angelic beings have indestructible souls. So the decision that the angelic being makes, or the human being makes, determines where it ends up in the end. And so Satan would be around. He could have said, why did he let him go into the garden or roam around the earth? Why not chain him up? Well, the basic facts about the book of Genesis and the incident in the garden is that Eve went to the tree. She chose to stay and listen to the serpent, which, as in Maria Valtorta's vision, Jesus says, look, she could have said to herself, look, this is strange, animals don't talk. This creature's talking. Right? And she felt this stirring within her with this animal speaking to her. So she could have gone to God the Father, who she'd been speaking to freely, as we know. God spoke with our parents in the garden and said, look, this is strange, this animal's spoken to me, I feel disturbed. Can you cure me? She could have done this, but she stayed and listened to this serpent. And instead of then going to God the Father, she went to her husband and tried to convince him, without any authority whatsoever, that this was a good thing. So it was Satan, yes, who instigates, but she bears the majority of the blame for what she then did. And her husband bears the majority of the blame for what he then did. Because it wasn't even the snake this time convincing him. It was the mere helpmate, the woman.
Well, I suppose when you say mere, one thing I see about Eve when I sort of read it is that, you know how we see women now. I feel that the way that Eve persuaded Adam, it's like she was a lot more, you could say not really manly, but it's, the way that I see her is that she's a lot different from how women are now. So it just feels that there was something that happened to change the way women are towards men now compared to how Eve was. But what was I going to say?
That's a progressive evil, though. And there's a different kind of evil that's affected women. There's affected. I mean, we have common evils which affect us both. But then, with our respective sexes, we have different kinds of evils as well that work on us. And so women who are affected by feminist revolution, which has become more and more extreme since Simone de Beauvoir, and the kind of the male approach to life is also where we are not seeing ourselves now as husbands and fathers primarily. So we're all affected in different ways. And in fact, our lives now, instead of uniting in Catholic marriage, as in medieval Christendom, where you unite like that, for life, now it's actually two fighters at each other. And American men, you see it on the internet, American men, they're saying, don't marry, because she'll just marry you, and she's already planning when she'll divorce you and take all your money. So there's this kind of attitude of warfare between men and women, and none of them are happy. Well, nobody's happy. You have this brief happy romance period, which is what draws people in, this anti-Christian approach to relations between the sexes. But then it's just setting the scene for a catastrophe of all these relationships which are catastrophic all over the Western world. So Eve has sort of started the ball rolling, but the Blessed Virgin Mary cured that in the way that Jesus cured us men, if we accept the grace that God gives.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And so you know what you were saying about the you were saying about Satan. Because the thoughts that I've had in relation to the subject is you know when the obviously God's however he made the angels, and you know then because looking at how it is in the Bible, it seems to indicate that you had the Father first, and then the Father and the Son, and then the angels came afterwards. So I presume, do Catholics believe that?
Well, in the book of Genesis, you know, God is there, and the Spirit of God hovers over the face of the waters. So we've got the Spirit, and then God's, I think in the more literal translations, you know, it's God's word that creates, and it's God's word that walks in the garden.
Oh yeah, but I mean before. So do you believe the angels came about before the garden?
Oh yes. And Saint Augustine says that when God said, "Let there be light," Augustine thinks the light may be referring to the angels, the creation of the angels.
Right.
But you know, that's just that's speculation. Yeah. Augustine's a great bloke, honestly. But anyway, it doesn't mean he's correct. It just means that there's different interpretations. And I'd say that, for us Catholics, it's a fact that the angels were created before man, before the garden and the human race and all the animals.
But it wasn't explicit in the Bible?
No, it's not. It's true.
So
the creation is not, but there is evidence.
So with the obviously when the angels came about, would do Catholics do they believe that God knew that at the time when however he made them, that he knew that they would cause problems as well, would sin?
Yeah, he knows everything. You see, like past, present, and future, or like a scroll just looks. We're in time, so he knows what free choices we will make, and what free choices the angels will make. They're still free choices, and so yes, he knows.
Right. So because then because what I'm trying to get to is that we have that situation. Obviously, you've got the angels, and God already knows that some of them are going to cause a problem.
Yeah.
And I suppose this is the part I've been thinking about the most recently, is that obviously with God knowing that there's problems going to come, if the angels, he's going to need a way. I'm trying to see if I can get this right now. So he's got the angels; they're in heaven, but the problem is that because this is a part that I'm trying to see if there's any other Catholics who thought about this, and it's to do with the fact that you've got God and his kingdom. So now, because he rules his kingdom in heaven, he can't. He can give like laws, etc., commandments to counter evil by telling people, do things this way, because he knows that when people do things that way, that will stop evil from either manifesting or growing. But then, even though he's telling them about what to do to stop evil, he's got no way to demonstrate what evil's like in his kingdom, because then he'd have to relinquish some sort of hold on his kingdom to demonstrate evil, because he's all good.
Okay, I'm not sure actually. Intellectually, it's possible to know what evil is without actually doing it. You can imagine a scenario.
Well, I suppose I think so. What I'm trying to say is that in order to show how bad evil is, the easiest way to do that is to demonstrate it. But what I'm saying is that in God's kingdom, because his kingdom's holy, you can't demonstrate evil in it because he's there.
Yeah.
And so what I've been thinking is that that's one of the reasons why he made creation. Because if he makes creation, and then knowing that Adam's going to fail, so then the earth's going to be corrupt. So now the earth becomes the ideal, place to demonstrate.
Crucible.
But then that would be like saying he wanted Adam to fall. But actually, our view is that he wanted Adam not to fall, and that therefore there would have not have been all this catastrophe we've experienced, and our lives would have gone in a different direction
He could have given him the insight to make it less likely that he fell. And he's a very unlucky family, what with their first two children, one killing the other. It's very unlucky, isn't it? Very bad family.
Well, we don't use the term luck.
Well, it's a bad family.
But anyway,
Bad
Mixed family, like most families.
They know God, they see God, and they disobey God, and then their children kill each other.
Well,
anyway,
it's not good.
I was just trying to get, because we're kind of getting away. So, so the way I was, because you know what you're saying there about how, because the way I said it makes it sound as if that because God knew it was going to happen. But the way it seems to me is that it's not that he's doing, it's not. So, as far as I'm concerned, he made the earth. He wanted it to succeed.
Yeah.
So that's what God's want is.
Yeah.
But then the knowledge that it wasn't going to, it's a convenient place to then demonstrate evil since Adam is going to fail. So what I'm saying is that the fact that now God has a place to demonstrate evil, it was Adam's fault, not God's fault, because Adam's the one who made the decision.
Well, that's true.
But then God still got his demonstration area where now, because you know what he said about why not kill Satan? Well, if he killed Satan and the angels, then you wouldn't be able to have a place where the evil gets to manifest itself out to the greatest way it can.
Except that without Satan, it's possible there could have been a fall.
Yeah. But it's just that Satan, because he's the way I see it, he's like the ultimate example.
Yeah.
So God knows that Satan's going to show you like the ultimate of how basically the worst that evil's going to happen.
Yeah.
Satan's going to be able to, because of what Satan's like, he's going to actually show you the worst of the worst, essentially. Whereas without him,
Yes.
it'd be like a half-baked version.
We have this phrase, "Oh happy fault," which is the fall of Adam, because without the fall of Adam, we wouldn't have had Christ and the crucifixion. So it's a happy fault that brought us our salvation. So if Adam hadn't sinned, all this that we celebrate at Easter as Catholics wouldn't have happened. So, oh happy fault, we say. It's quite strange.
Felix culpa in Latin.
Okay, yeah, Felix culpa. So, in a way I can go along with what you're saying. I would just want to say that really the basic point is that God is good, he creates a perfect universe, sets up everything perfectly, and creatures with free will, be they angelic or human, together have messed up that plan. And that Christ remedied that plan in its fundamentals, but the rest of that remedy is going to take place in the future. And in that, as you say, evil plays out, but it was not God's wish that there ever be any evil to play out.
No. But it's that's how it kind of seems to me, is that obviously, like you say, he didn't want it, but just because it was going to happen, that would then be a way, because I suppose it's like with when at school when we do practical, because they could sit there, we could read the books all day, but it's when we do the practical that's when the knowledge comes into our head. And then the other thing that
we were not supposed to have the knowledge, though. We weren't supposed to have the knowledge.
Yeah, well, I suppose not. But it's when we look at, like you're saying about Christ coming, it's almost to me as if what happens here on earth, and the fact, and this is the other thing that I've been thinking as well, is that when Jesus came and told the apostles about to not resist evil, and the fact that they had to, what he said about loving your enemies. If the fall and everything hadn't happened, then God would never have been able to demonstrate that.
That's true, and that's why we say Felix culpa, happy fault.
Yeah.
But still, the aim was from the beginning there would never have been this.
Yeah.
It's like God offered to be the king of ancient Israel. The tribes would be united unto him, but they insisted on having a king.
Yeah.
So he gave them kings, and they were warned there's going to be a problem. They got their kings, and sometimes these kings were brilliant, and it demonstrated some great virtues.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the plan. So that's not the same as with Christ. But the fact is, God works with our faults and brings good out of them. But if you see, we mustn't lose sight of the plan, the first plan, because if anybody says, like you said, what started our conversation, atheists might come and say, oh, why is there this suffering, why is there that? And Christianity has the answer to that. No other religion does, by the way.
Well, yeah, that's true, because the Muslims actually blame Allah for it, isn't it?
Well, they're the same as the Calvinists. Allah determines the amount of adultery you'll commit. It determines that whether you're going to go to hell or Jannah before you're born. So that's obviously strict determinism. And in fact, those who went against that in the medieval period were killed by the winning Muslim party. So, they don't believe in free will. Though they might say they do, they don't. But their incident in the Garden of Eden was like messed up, like all their versions of what happened in reality in the Bible. Adam and Eve sinned. They were forgiven. That was that. End of that.
Oh, but
no great significance.
But that's not true, though, because he still booted them out, so they weren't forgiven.
He booted them out, yeah. But they then just carry on about their business down on earth now. But they're not changed in themselves. They're the same creatures as they were up there in paradise.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I mean, Adam's like a 90 foot tall or something. But apart from the size, it's the same Adam and Eve here as was up there. So they're carrying on as human beings in the same way as they would. They just haven't got the beautiful paradise to live in.
So I suppose... But
that can't explain the origin of evil unless they were evil to begin with.
Well, yeah, that's the only thing.
But that would mean the founder was evil, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because he made them that way.
So that's the dilemma. If he makes them with a capacity for evil, no, not the capacity, but if he makes them inclined to evil, then
like
what
how we
kind
are
of God
now,
is that? You can't say that God created the world and it was good.
No.
Well, we can, because although God creates us with all kinds of capacities, he had set things up in that we wouldn't do evil. We didn't have to. The first parents had the gift of being in control of their passions. And that's what we lost, and why we're not so in control of them. That we can have control if we adhere, as we say, to the sacraments, to the teaching of the church, the graces God gives through his sacraments and outside of the sacraments. Then we can lead the good life that he wanted us to lead from the beginning. But for the Muslim, Adam is just the Adam that was created in the beginning. And therefore every human being today is just the same as he would have been had he stayed up there in paradise.
I never thought of that, actually.
No, it just occurred to me when I found out what their Garden of Eden story is. Actually, there's no fall. There's no fall at all.
Yeah, it's true. It's just that they get booted. And that's the only change that happens. It's them get booted out. So, because I just want to see, I watch your later videos, about this Maria...
Valtorta,
so who's she?
Okay, she was born in about 1895, something like that, 1897. In Italy, southern Italy, and she died in 1961.
Right.
In 1943, Jesus began to give her visions of his life 2,000 years ago.
Okay.
And also other stuff as well, like visions of the early martyrs, stuff like that, and lessons about various things in life.
Right.
Now we've got the Gospels, 4 Gospels. They're that thin, right?
Well,
in the Bible.
Well,
mine are anyway. Like thin. Not a lot. But it's 3.5 years of ministry. And if you go back to the birth, the Annunciation to the Virgin Mary, the whole life will be really big. But we don't have much detail.
No.
And it's understandable because apparently it's what you can fit on a scroll. Back 2,000 years ago,
you could carry.
Yeah, they couldn't carry 10 scrolls around, so you'd have to put a limit. But because it's the 20th century, Jesus gives her the gospel separated out into, well, I've got 5 hardback volumes of about 800 pages each. Right? So 4,000 closely writ pages.
Right.
And now in 10 softback volumes. So I calculated, because I read War and Peace 20 odd years ago. It's about 3 times as long as War and Peace, and that's a massive novel. But the point is, the vast majority of this work is just the Gospels.
Right.
It's expansions of the accounts that we get quite briefly of Jesus' activities. Expansions of the parables, which are given in short form in here, and Jesus' speeches, his sermons, are much more expanded as well. And we have St. John saying,
Yeah,
not all that he did would be
written,
in this book, right?
Because we take up loads of books.
Yeah. So this is where we get all this. So that was her. Now she's not the only one this happened to. Back in the 16th century, a nun called Mary of Agreda was given a similar kind of set of visions, but unfortunately a priest told her to burn everything.
Okay.
She burnt it all, and then another priest, a wise priest, said he commanded her to rewrite it from memory, and she did. But here's the problem, and Jesus speaks to Maria Valtorta about this. Her work was ruined, not in that it got anything wrong in terms of doctrine, but because when you write things from memory, you're now putting your own mentality into it, because it's your memory and you see it a certain way. She therefore rewrote what she'd originally written in a way which was kind of like containing what he called the pomp of 16th century Spanish court.
Right.
All kinds of florid stuff which wouldn't be there when she originally wrote it, because when you write, like Maria Valtorta wrote and Mary of Agreda wrote, Jesus is dictating, or she's seeing the vision and she writes immediately what she's seeing, so there's no mediation of your cultural baggage. That's the problem with Mary of Agreda, bless her, Venerable Mary of Agreda. There's another one called Venerable blessed now, I think, Anne Catherine Emmerich, in about 1820.
Not venerable, I think it's already blessed.
Blessed now, right?
Yeah, or maybe saint, but I'm
not
sure.
saint yet. I don't think she's canonised yet.
Blessed.
Yeah, and she was living in the late 18th, early 19th centuries, and she received visions of our Lord's life. But the problem there was, she had a certain dialect of German, because all Germany was obviously not one country then, all different states, and there was no unification. Sort of like Italian, lots of different dialects. And there was a famous German poet, and he became an atheist, Clemens Brentano, his name was, famous 19th century German romantic poet. He came and he converted back to the Catholic faith because of her, what she was saying. But he, in writing down what she was saying she was seeing, he seems to have elaborated on it with his own thoughts, maybe apocryphal writings, and so he made a mess in some ways of her work.
So she didn't double checking.
She couldn't. She was on a sickbed.
Oh, right.
She couldn't. She was, and also he may not have understood her dialect properly. But the key point is he shouldn't have done what he did. And so we have a problem with those writings. But with Maria Valtorta's writings, it's the direct vision, and she's writing, and Jesus corrected her notebooks. Like what I've got is like the printed copy, but the actual original notebooks exist. They're in Italy, and so it's like they're available to be checked against the printed stuff. So it's the only one that's really kind of kept its authenticity without being adulterated. But what draws me to it is not just that; it's that in my earlier videos on her, they show, because what I've read, there's information which she could not have known embedded in there, astronomical information, which gives you the date of the crucifixion, information about the topography of Palestine, the villages, and which nobody knew existed at the time she was alive, but were excavated subsequently after her death, because they're not in the Macmillan Encyclopedia of, I think, 1935, what it is, but they're in the Macmillan Encyclopedia of 1968, 7 years after she died, but they're mentioned by her. Other stuff has been done to the customs coins, names. It's like she and when Jesus gave her these dictations, he didn't give them all in order. Many of them were out of order to conform with feast days. So the Passion vision will be at Easter time. So, and other visions at different times. But then Jesus tells her to put them together in certain order. And the fact is, this is a vast work. They're all put together and they're seamless. You know, you'd expect contradictions to appear, disjointedness, but no, it's all seamless.
Like concordance.
Yeah, and you might be able to do that with a small novel. But I know if you read like Bleak House by Charles Dickens, as I did, a big book, he gets things out of joint, out of sequence. So that's a remarkable aspect of it as well. So yeah, so it's a science. Like, it's one thing that amazed me, because she's so precise in her. The one thing about it is she's not like super duper educated. She's educated like an Italian middle class girl. It's good education, but not super duper university education. So she's got a great descriptive capacity, which is perhaps why Jesus chose her. And so there was an archaeologist who went looking for a particular building in Jerusalem that she described, the Palace of Lazarus in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. What Palace of Lazarus in Jerusalem? He has a palace. You see, there's loads of things that are in this work that aren't in Scripture.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she says it's this palace he has in Jerusalem. She describes how Jesus is looking out and what he sees when he's on one of the parapets in this place. And she also describes the interior of this structure as well. Well, this guy goes looking for it. And in 1986, I think it is, he actually makes a determination of where this palace would be.
Right.
This place in Jerusalem. So, about 5 years later, a couple of Israeli archaeologists, they are digging on this part of Jerusalem where the Romans had done a lot of damage when they conquered the city. Lots of burnt out places. They find this building, a particular building, and when they excavate it, it's in a place called the Vul Museum now in Jerusalem. It's over the top of it. In there is a courtyard in the way that she describes, and rooms going off it in the way she describes, and there's this red room which she vividly describes in the books, and it's where Jesus celebrates the Passover the year before his crucifixion.
But what do you mean by red though?
It's a painted red.
Oh, right.
It's entirely red.
Did they use paint back then?
Yeah, they're the paints. Yeah, they're the paints. So I mean, they had artwork as well,
Oh yeah.
And you go to, if you look at
Egypt, isn't it?
yeah, you look at Herculaneum, for example, or where Vesuvius destroyed.
There's a place in Iraq, I think, as well, where it's got the paintings on the wall.
Okay.
Or Iran. Yeah.
Yeah, so you go to Pompeii, there's a beautiful rooms with beautiful paintings. That's around the time of Christ, it's just after, right?
Yeah.
So this beautiful red, well, it just fits the description that she gives. But she dies in 1961. And this guy, who's actually, the first one was not an archaeologist, I think, he was just an enthusiast. He locates the place based on her writings,
Right.
without actually doing any archaeological digging.
Yeah.
And he's actually about 50 meters from where it actually is,
Right.
in his own calculation.
Yeah.
And then when it's dug in the 90s, and I've got like a couple of books which show these structures, and how on earth could she have got that information? How on earth? So with that, there's a guy who's done a lot of maps which show the movement of Jesus with the apostles for the 3.5 years of his public ministry in various parts of Palestine.
Yeah.
And it shows where he is and when, and which apostles he's with and when. And then Passion Week, where he moves, all the movements around there. So it's and finally, in another book, the book of Azariah, who's a guardian angel, he gives a meditations on the 50 weeks of the Mass year, because in the old Mass you had the 1 year cycle, not our 3 year cycle. And then he says, Azariah says, almost as a by the by, and that's the 1738 weeks of Jesus' life on earth. So what's that? Well, you calculate it, it comes to 33 1/3 years of life. And you go from the beginning, which is 1 BC, in Valtorta. If you calculate on Valtorta, Valtorta doesn't give dates, you just work out the dates from these writings, and you get to 1 BC, and you get right up to April the 3rd, AD 34. And that's why these, particularly Italian guys, have said this is the date Jesus died. AD 34, not AD 30 or AD 33, which are the common dates.
Yeah.
And one might say, well, why 34? Well, because if you take, I think AD 33 as what's called embolistic year, that is, the Jews would add an extra month on, an extra month of Adar, to align their lunar calendar with the movement of the sun. Because if you've got a lunar calendar, it's going to get out of joint with the seasons.
Yeah.
So you have to add an extra month of Adar every now and again. The Jews did that, say every 3 years. So if you take that into account, AD 34 is the right year, and other information in the work makes it all line up. It's impossible for a woman
What about
who's bedridden to do this.
14 Nisan? 14 Nisan stays
14 Nisan.
there, yeah?
14 Nisan, AD 34 is the year these Italian scientists have worked out as the date of the crucifixion. But there we are. So, this is not in anybody else's work on earth. This is unique in 2,000 years.
I read all the fragments about talking about you. Really heavy.
But it amazes me. That's why I decided to focus a lot on it. Because if that's all there, that information which she could never know, then that suggests to me there's good reason to believe that she's reporting correctly what Jesus said and what Mary said. And when he gives his meditations on Genesis or whatever it is, and this is probably our Lord speaking. And when he validates Kowalska and so on, and Josefa Menendez, she wrote the book on the way of divine love.
Yeah.
I think in the 1920s, I can't remember when it was.
Right.
That's Sister Josefa Menendez, another one whom Jesus says is authentic. That's him, he says. That's me speaking to her. So and Banu, the children that Mary appeared to the children in Banu in France, I think, or Belgium, in 1933, I think it was.
I don't know.
Around that time, that's another one he says is authentic. So
Yeah, so you said like about Maria, and I remember when we talked a while back, you mentioned about there's certain prophets or people who prophesy in the Catholic Church as well.
yes.
So do you have any of these like prophecies or writings? Do any of them make it into the is it dogma, I suppose?
No, they don't.
Oh, they don't. All right.
No.
So
The nearest we've got, I think, is the Fatima. When Mary appeared to 3 children at Fatima in Portugal in 1917, certain predictions were made, and that became very much a popular, almost established devotion apparition series. But the Church doesn't say that you have to believe that.
right.
It's not like official teaching.
So you never had when official teachings come in the church, they're only decided in those meetings.
Effectively, when the bishops and pope and the cardinals get together, and then you get doctrine defined and declared. The pope can on his own, but it's often in these meetings, but not like an apparitions message. Like all this talk I give of Maria Valtorta, that would never become doctrine in the church.
Right.
So it's a private revelation.
Yeah.
And that's also the church right now doesn't approve it. It's not approved.
Right.
It's frowned on.
Okay.
Right now.
Yeah.
Like we had today is the Feast of Divine Mercy, where there's an apparition to a Polish nun. That is more embedded in the church as an official thing because it's a feast day now.
Yeah.
So
Today
that
is
is.
the feast.
But that was disapproved of by the church in the 1950s.
Okay.
Because the church is prudent. It can approve of things, it can put things on ice, it can disapprove of things, it can wait until it feels ready.
Like Ventricoria, waiting.
Yes, that's it. That happens in the church all the time. So there's no worries about that.
well,
it happens.
Yeah. All right. Nice.
Yeah. All right then.
Yes, I'll see
Talk
you
to
around.
you again.
Okay.